Have you ever loved someone so deeply that you accepted the crumbs they threw your way and called it love? Be honest. You waited for their messages. You replayed old moments just to feel something real again. And no matter how little they gave you, you convinced yourself it's better than nothing. But tell me this, did they ever truly love you? Or were they feeding on your need while you starved yourself of dignity? This video is not about revenge. It's about awakening. Because the same person who once gave you crumbs will one day choke on the silence you've built from your self-respect. So before we begin, I want you to like this video, subscribe to Stoic Mysteries, and watch till the end, because somewhere in this story, you'll find your reflection, and maybe your freedom. Point 1. The crumbs that felt like a feast. Do you remember the beginning? That first spark, the laughter that came easy, the messages that made the world feel alive again. She looked at you once and everything inside you believed this might finally be real. And for a while it was, until it wasn't. The calls grew shorter. The replies took longer. But you told yourself, she's busy. It's fine. One-word answers became whole conversations in your mind. You'd stare at the screen, reread the last text, searching for hidden warmth inside cold words. Tell me, did you ever stay awake at 2 a.m.? Scrolling through old pictures, convincing yourself that love was still there, that maybe if you just stayed patient, she'd return to the way she was in the beginning. That's how it starts. The starvation of the soul disguised as devotion. She gives you crumbs and you build them into a feast. A half-smile feels like hope. A delayed reply feels like proof she still cares. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. But when you're drowning in attachment, that truth feels impossible to hold, because your mind becomes the battlefield in one part, whispering that you deserve more, the other begging for anything that keeps her near. You start losing yourself in the waiting. Your world shrinks to the size of her attention span. You measure your worth by how often she looks at you, texts you, remembers you. And still, you keep giving time, energy, heart, all for small gestures that shouldn't need to be earned. But love, real love, doesn't feed you in rations. It doesn't make you question if you're too much or not enough. It doesn't ask you to shrink just to fit someone else's comfort. Look back. Every time you accepted less, you told her, "I will keep showing up even if you don't." And she listened. She learned that your forgiveness was endless, your boundaries negotiable. That's how the pattern was born. And yet deep inside, there was always a quiet voice, a whisper from the man you used to be. He'd say, "This isn't love. This is survival." But you silenced him, didn't you? Because you'd rather feel something painful than feel nothing at all. The Stoics taught that suffering ends when perception changes. The day you see the crumbs for what they are, not affection, but avoidance, and the hunger begins to fade. You start remembering the taste of self-respect. And when that happens, when you finally stop chasing what only drains you, the story begins to turn. Because the one who once felt powerful feeding you little pieces of love will soon feel powerless watching you walk away in silence. Point 2. The moment you walk away. There comes a night you'll never forget. Not because something happened, but because nothing did. You'll sit there staring at your phone, realizing she's not coming back this time. No message, no apology, just silence. And for the first time, you won't reach out. It'll hurt. God, it'll hurt. But beneath that pain, something new begins to breathe. It's not relief, not yet. It's awareness, a quiet recognition that the version of you who kept begging for love has finally run out of words. Do you remember how many times you tried to explain your worth? How many nights you replayed her indifference, wondering what more you could have done? How many times you told yourself, maybe if I just love her harder? That was the trap, the belief that your love could fix what she refused to face. But love cannot grow in a place that denies its own roots. Marcus Aurelius once said, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to love." And that's the truth you rediscover in the aftermath. Love was never the problem. Where you placed it was. The moment you walk away isn't about revenge. It's not about proving her wrong or making her miss you. It's about remembering who you were before you forgot yourself in her chaos. Because here's the secret few admit. When you stop chasing, you don't just reclaim your peace, you reclaim your power. The very thing she once admired, your calm, your focus, your strength, starts to return. and the energy she used to control begins slipping through her fingers. Do you know what happens next? The silence you once feared becomes her punishment. She starts to wonder why the one who used to break for her has suddenly become unshakable, why the man who used to beg has vanished into mystery. And deep inside she feels it, that strange pull of absence. Because people who feed on control panic when they lose access to your emotions. The same silence that used to torture you will now haunt her. But don't do it for her reaction. Do it because it's time you honored your own soul again. You gave everything, your patience, your heart, your loyalty. You turned pain into poetry just to keep her close. But this chapter isn't about her anymore. It's about you remembering that peace isn't found in being wanted. It's found in not needing to be. So when you finally walk away, don't look back. Because the story isn't ending and it's flipping. And the man who once begged for crumbs will soon be the one she can't stop remembering. With that silence, you become unforgettable. Point 3. The power of the Stoic distance. There comes a moment after heartbreak when silence stops being your punishment and starts becoming your protection. At first, the quiet feels unbearable, like standing in a room filled with memories that won't stop whispering her name. Every place you go reminds you of her laugh, her scent, her voice saying, "I'll never leave." And yet she did. But here's what most people never understand. Distance isn't just about walking away. It's about no longer feeding what drains you. It's about stepping out of the emotional battlefield, where your peace was the casualty. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's the essence of the Stoic distance. It's the art of mastering the space between your pain and your reaction. When you stop reaching out, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop fighting to be understood and something shifts. The same energy that once went into chasing now begins to rebuild you, piece by piece, breath by breath. And that distance becomes magnetic. Because here's the paradox. The less you try to prove your worth, the more undeniable it becomes. She'll start to wonder why your energy feels different, why you're not reacting the way you used to, why your silence suddenly has weight. That's the power of emotional gravity. The calmness that comes from a man who's seen the storm and decided not to dance in it anymore. You're no longer fighting for her attention. You're protecting your peace. Think about it. How many times did you beg for clarity when deep down you already knew the truth? How many times did you try to fix what she was never ready to heal? That was the old you, the man who mistook chaos for connection. But this version of you understands something far deeper. Distance doesn't mean indifference. It means self-respect. It's the moment you tell the universe, "I will no longer chase what disturbs my spirit." And that's when the tables turn, because the one who left you wondering will start to wonder about you. Your silence will echo louder than any argument. Your absence will become her mirror, forcing her to face what she tried to avoid. The Stoics believed that the highest power is self-control, to be unmoved by what doesn't serve your soul. That's the essence of masculine peace. Not coldness, but calm. And the truth? The moment you step into that space, when you stop needing closure, validation, or revenge, that's when you become truly dangerous. Because now your love isn't desperate, it's disciplined. Your heart isn't broken, it's becoming wise. That's the Stoic distance, quiet, firm, untouchable. That's the Stoic distance, quiet, firm, untouchable. And it's exactly what makes the person who once gave you crumbs start craving the feast they lost. Point 4. The mirror of her own choices. There comes a time when the silence you leave behind becomes her mirror, not the one that flatters her, but the one that shows her truth. At first she won't see it. She'll distract herself with noise, with attention, with the illusion of freedom. She'll tell herself you were too much, too serious, or too emotional. But time has a way of stripping away every mask. And when the noise fades, she'll look around and realize something haunting. The peace she feels now isn't peace at all. It's emptiness. You see, when you were there, she could throw her confusion at you and you'd catch it. When she pulled away, you'd chase. When she tested your patience, you'd stay. And she thought that made her powerful. But what she didn't understand was, your presence was the mirror that reflected the best in her. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you were in her life, she felt valuable because your love was pure. But when she walked away, she had to face her own colors, the insecurity, the emptiness, the guilt she buried beneath her ego. This is where the story turns. Because now, your absence forces her to see herself without the validation she once borrowed from you. Every smile feels staged. Every connection feels shallow. And deep down, she starts to remember the man who saw her not for her potential, but for her truth. That's when the reflection begins to hurt, because for the first time, she realizes what she destroyed. Not a relationship, but a sanctuary. She'll remember the late-night talks, the patience you showed when she was distant, the small things you did when no one was watching. And it hits her, you weren't perfect, but you were real. And real is rare. Here's the secret most men never learn. When you stop fighting to be seen, you force others to see themselves. When you walk away with peace, they have to face the chaos within. That's why your silence is more powerful than words, because it becomes their inner voice. And now she's standing in front of that mirror, realizing that every choice she made wasn't about you. It was a reflection of who she truly was at that time. The avoidance, the manipulation, the half-love, those were all projections of her own wounds. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." You've done that. You've become that. And in doing so, you've held up the most brutal mirror of all, the mirror of consequence. So if you've ever felt invisible, forgotten, or replaced, remember this. You didn't lose her. You showed her who she was. And now every night she looks in that mirror, she sees the cost of mistaking your love for something replaceable. Point 5. The silent transformation. Silence. It used to hurt, didn't it? It felt like a punishment. Like being erased from someone's life while still carrying the weight of every memory you built together. But over time, that silence changes shape. It becomes less like a wound and more like a cocoon. And inside that cocoon, something begins to shift. At first, you don't even notice it. You're just trying to get through the day, working, surviving, pretending you're fine. But slowly, the moments that once broke you start teaching you. The same pain that made you fall to your knees starts making you stand taller. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That's the essence of transformation, realizing that your healing doesn't come from them. It comes from your ability to reinterpret what happened.
She thought silence would destroy you.
But instead it rebuilt you. You stopped waiting for her to text and started texting your own life back into existence. You began to rediscover what peace feels like. Not the peace that comes from being loved, but the peace that comes from loving yourself without condition. That's when something powerful happens. Your energy changes. You no longer move from fear, you move from choice. You don't chase, you attract. You don't explain, you embody. And the world can feel it. Even she can feel it. That quiet strength that doesn't need to prove a thing. It's the same strength the Stoics called ataraxia, a state of calm so deep that chaos cannot touch it. But let's be real for a second. It wasn't easy getting here, was it? You had nights where the silence screamed louder than your heartbeat. You replayed conversations, scrolled through old photos, wondered how something so real could vanish. You might have even questioned your worth. And yet here you are, breathing differently, walking differently, seeing yourself not as a man who was abandoned, but as one who awakened. Because heartbreak doesn't destroy a Stoic, it reveals him. You start to realize you didn't lose your soulmate, you lost your distraction. You didn't lose love, you lost your illusion. And that clarity, that's the beginning of your rebirth. Now you don't need her to validate your worth. Your silence has become your language of power. Your peace has become your revenge. And your growth, your quiet, relentless, unstoppable growth, is the proof that even in pain there is purpose. Marcus said, "What stands in the way becomes the way." That heartbreak, that rejection, that silence became your path. And the most beautiful part? You didn't have to shout about it. You simply transformed silently, powerfully, completely. Point 6. When she realizes you've changed, there's a moment she never thought would come. The day she looks at you and doesn't recognize you anymore. Not because you've become someone else, but because you've finally become yourself. She remembers the version of you that used to wait for her text. The man who dropped everything at the sound of her name. The one who apologized just to keep the peace even when he wasn't wrong. The man who couldn't sleep without wondering, did I lose her for good? But that man is gone now. Something happened in your silence, something she didn't expect. You stopped bleeding for love that didn't value your heartbeat. You started healing, slowly, quietly, deeply. And the man who once lived in reaction now moves in reason. You've stopped chasing closure and started creating peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live." And that's what you've done. You've begun to live again, not as someone's half choice, not as someone's backup plan, but as a man grounded in his own worth. The world around you starts to shift. You smile differently. You speak less but say more. You move with purpose, not desperation. Even your silence feels heavier, not because it's cold, but because it carries self-respect. And that's when she feels it. That quiet ache, the one that says, "He's not mine anymore." She starts to notice your absence in small, haunting ways. In the way no one listens to her the way you did. In the way no one sees her the way you once did. Past her looks, past her defenses into her soul. But the difference now? You no longer look back, because you've learned something she never did. Love is not found in possession. It's found in peace. You understand now that what you wanted from her was never love. It was reflection, a mirror of the love you hadn't yet given yourself. You used to fear losing her. Now you fear losing your peace. You used to want her to come back. Now you want your purpose to keep expanding. And that shift and that subtle, silent, unstoppable transformation, that's what makes her obsessed. Because deep down she knows she'll never meet this version of you again, not because you're unavailable, but because you're untouchable. You've turned your pain into discipline, your heartbreak into clarity, your longing into wisdom. You've become the calm after her storm, and the storm can never touch the calm again. Marcus Aurelius said,
The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury.
So you didn't seek revenge, you sought evolution. And that's what makes her realize you were never the broken one. She just couldn't meet you at your depth. And now she's haunted by the one truth she can't escape. The man who once needed her validation has become the man she now needs to understand. Point 7. When you become the lesson. There's a strange peace that comes when you finally understand. You were never meant to be her forever. You were meant to be her lesson. At first that realization hurts, because you remember how real it felt. The late-night talks that stretched into dawn. The laughter that made time disappear. The way you saw her, not as perfect, but as possible. You gave her a love that came from your soul, not your ego. And in return, she gave you fragments. Moments of warmth mixed with waves of confusion. She gave you hope, then silence. Promises, then distance. You kept showing up, thinking love could fix what honesty never could. But love doesn't always mean staying. Sometimes love is the quiet decision to let someone face their own reflection. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." She was your obstacle, but she was also your teacher. Through her, you learned your own limits. Through her, you discovered the difference between attachment and alignment, between desire and peace. And one day, she'll look back and realize, you weren't just another man who loved her. You were the man who showed her what love could have been if she had been ready. That realization won't come with fireworks. It'll come in silence, maybe on a random night. Maybe while she's lying next to someone who doesn't truly see her. She'll remember the way you looked at her, the way you understood what she never said aloud. And it'll hit her, that she mistook that depth for weakness. But you've moved on to a quieter kind of strength. A strength that doesn't need validation, revenge, or closure. Because the lesson wasn't for her alone, and it was for you too. You learned that love isn't about who stays, it's about who grows. You learned that not everyone who touches your heart is meant to hold it. And you learned that heartbreak, in its cruelest form, is also the birthplace of your wisdom. She became the story that woke you up. The wound that forced you to rebuild. And in that rebuilding, you became what she could never understand. A man who leads with calm, not chaos. With presence, not pursuit. With boundaries, not begging. You've become the lesson she'll remember for years. The one who taught her that love without respect is starvation, and that losing you wasn't her freedom, it was her karma. Marcus Aurelius said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." You reacted by rising. You took pain and turned it into purpose. You took silence and turned it into strength. And that's what makes you unforgettable. Not because she lost you, but because you became everything she was never ready to meet. Conclusion. And that's the lesson. Never chase what runs from peace. Never beg to be chosen by someone who doesn't even choose themselves. In the end, love isn't about control. It's about alignment. Two people who meet in truth, not transaction. So if this story felt like yours, remember, your silence is not weakness. It's transformation. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.